Welcome to the Empowered Podcast with Deanna Merlino, a personal development show where I will be sharing with you just how to transform yourself into the best version of you, both inside and out. From fitness and nutrition to business and positive mindset work, I'll be showing you exactly how to live your best life. I'll be keeping it as real and raw as it gets. So get ready to peel back the layers and really transform yourself under the surface, because nothing is better than finding your purpose and living this life as your true, authentic self. Welcome back, my empowered fam. I am so excited to be here with you today. I have an incredible guest for you. I already know today is going to be a wild one, so buckle up. Let me go ahead and get her introduced. Today I have Caili Danieu, and she is a life coach, a psychic medium, and public speaker. After earning her master's degree in clinical psychology, she realized that working in the world of mainstream mental health didn't allow her to incorporate an aspect she found crucial in her own healing journey, her spirituality. She recently gave a TEDx talk titled How I Found Joy by Embracing Suffering, and just launched a podcast of her own, the Scrappy Soul Podcast. Caili believes that joy is our birthright and is passionate about helping people find theirs. That was like a perfect synopsis for you. But welcome, Caili. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I can't even imagine how today is going to go. So honestly, just get started by giving me your background info, whatever you want to add to that, just kind of jumping right in.
Yeah. So trigger warning. My story is a bumpy one. So how I arrived here, usually I start right in the middle by talking about my most lethal suicide attempt that happened when I was 18 years old. When I was 18 years old, I hanged myself and I died a medical death. I was without oxygen for a period of time, and my heart stopped beating. And this was not the first time I had attempted suicide, but it was the most severe. And in retrospect, it really served as a turning point in my journey, because up until that point, I had been pretty certain that I would die by suicide. I spent the 10 years prior to that really chronically mentally ill, struggling with depression, eating disorder. I was drinking quite a lot. And I was just certain that I would die by suicide. It wasn't like it was just a matter of when and how. And after, that wasn't the first time I had attempted to end my life, but it was, I died and I came back, and something in me, in my 18-year-old misery, even then was like, okay, this is pretty crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was intuition at the time, but it was that I was like, this makes no sense that I should be here, and not only be here still, but also walking, talking, breathing, cognitively performing. I lost nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't skip a beat, and I was dead. My mom guesses between 8 to 12 minutes.
Wow.
So quite some time, the brain starts shutting down after about 4 minutes of no oxygen. And something in me knew that well, shit, can I swear on here? Sorry.
Yeah. Yep. Have at
it. Something in me was like, all right, well, get back to the drawing board, I guess. So I had been in therapy and I had been prescribed psychotropic medication for years prior to that. But I, just as well as I do, the power of intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't care to make any of this work, I'm not going to. And so I didn't. But after that, it was this begrudging epiphany that I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll try now. And so I started, and it was painful and I didn't like it. But I did have this knowing that if I was still going to be here, it wasn't to live a mundane, small existence. But I knew that I had to feel better to get to kind of the greatness that I assumed was guaranteed for me. And so that looked like just really digging into all the shit that I had been avoiding looking at for the 18 years prior to that. And then I knew that I was always passionate about helping people. Even in high school, even though I was like miserable, every summer I worked for Habitat for Humanity and in soup kitchens and teaching refugee children how to read. Like I was always really, really passionate about helping people. I just love people. And so I knew that if I was going to be alive, I might as well make a career out of that. And what I knew was like the Western model of psychology, because I had been a therapist. I had seen psychiatrists. So I went to school. I got my bachelor's in psychology. I got my master's degree in clinical psychology. I wanted to be a PhD of clinical psychology because I thought that I needed to be a doctor in order to be worth anything. Wow. And then because I was doing all the right things in grad school, like exercising, meditating, talking with friends, going to therapy, taking my meds. And I kind of hit a wall. And I would need my medication increased like periodically still. And I was like, this again, like my intuition talking, but I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. But I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like I'm not getting at something. And so in rural Pennsylvania, of all places, I found this spiritual community and started kind of slowly tiptoeing towards this, and then jogging and then sprinting towards this path of spiritual, more holistic healing that has brought me to where I sit today. So people ask me a lot, like what my stance is on therapy and medication. And the bottom line is I wouldn't be alive without it. I would not be alive without traditional models of psychotherapy and without psychotropic medication. There's just no way. There's no way I would have survived without it. And there was a point at which I like surrendered to the fact that I'll just be one of those people that's on medication for the rest of my life. And like, that's okay. And then of course, once I like released that attachment, I started healing and working with my psychiatrist and my shaman in tandem. Figure that one out for me. Right. Wow. And now I haven't been on meds. I haven't been on meds in a very long time. 3 or 4 years. And it abides by all the laws of the universe that you read about on the internet and like hear about, but you never I feel like it's seldom do we understand them in practice as they're unfolding. And that's, but that's, like when I look back, I can very plainly see how it was always working, the law of attraction and some fate and some free will were always working to get me where I wanted to be, right? A place where I really love life. And I'm so incredibly fulfilled in the work that I do. But I had no idea that I was going to be a psychic medium when I was in graduate school studying clinical psychology. Like,
that's wild.
That's hysterical, actually. Wow.
How did you find your shaman?
Technically Tinder. So I through an ex-boyfriend. Okay. So I had been studying Kabbalah for a couple months with a spiritual mentor in Pennsylvania, and I had met this guy on Tinder, and like we clicked immediately. Like as I was getting ready for our first date, I was like, what do you wear on a first date with your boyfriend? Like, because I just like knew that we were going to be like, and we did, of course. And again, like, it's so funny because still at the time, I didn't like think I was psychic. I didn't like really honor my intuition completely, but there it was working. Like I knew that this is just like a formality that we were going on a first date. But anyway, he was working with this shaman. She's located in Australia, and he would just like kind of like sprinkle in bits and pieces about working with her. And I was like, would it be like a conflict of interest? Like, would I be able to see her? Should we have a session together? And he was like, oh, by all means, like go for it. And never look back. It's been like 4 years that I've been working with her. And it's been, so pivotal, because that was exactly around the time that I was getting clear on what I wanted from my life, like around the time that I was getting clear on what I wanted for my career. Because I was very quickly realizing therapy is not it. Like, I'm happy to do it after I graduate so that I can like continue my healing work and like figuring my stuff out. But like, this is not where I retire. No way. And then I met Kim and I was like, oh, she's definitely got a lot of pieces that I want to be when I grow up. like this woman
Mm.
fully expressed. She's talking about dragons. She's got these huge crystals. She's got like all the things in her office. And she's talking to me in a way that like, I've always longed to like converse, like speaking a language that I knew, but I didn't know I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a gift, like in so many ways for my healing, but also for like my actualization.
Would you be comfortable explaining what a shaman is for anyone who is unaware with like this kind of verse?
Yeah. So a shaman is an indigenously trained individual. So the I guess like theory or philosophy that they operate under is that when an individual experiences trauma, parts of our souls splinter off. And a shaman specializes in utilizing various techniques to kind of retrieve those fractured pieces and help you bring them back into like alignment with your soul, to like reintegrate those pieces of you back into you. And they use like meditation and trance and intuitive powers to like meet that end.
I literally just heard that theory very recently and I was like mind blown. Like, I mean, I
think I was the one that said that to you.
You very well could have been, because I didn't want to say that because I wasn't sure, but I was like, when you say it that way, like, damn, my poor little soul, it's very fractured. Like, help me put that back together. Like, just hearing it put that way is like, wow, everyone needs a shaman. Like, who wouldn't want a shaman?
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, exactly. I've referred a lot of people her way.
Yeah, I know I've asked you for information before. I never did anything with it, but it's just like a great reminder. But before I dive too far down this, I wanted to jump into the irony of like our reconnection. So I'm going to tell that story real quick before we just like deep dive. So my best friend, Hannah, we used to live together, I don't know, years ago. Like this is probably back in like 2010, probably 2011, I would say.
Yeah, it would have been 2011.
Yeah.
Because I was working at Bravo.
Yep.
So that was 11 years ago, I think.
I think it was like right around then. And you and Hannah worked together. So that's how we met. And then just like life and stuff, we were kind of just doing our own thing. And then literally a couple months ago, it had to have been a couple months ago, I went to a breathwork session, and that was my first in-person breathwork session. It was at a local yoga studio, and you were there, and we reconnected, and just like instant rekindling. Also, that was like in my beginning moments of like openly like diving into my spirituality, like publicly, and like going to classes and kind of like finding my tribe type of thing. So it was a moment of like, oh my God, I'm not the only weirdo. Like I know someone who is into this too. So it was really amazing. And we'll get to that later, but now you're going to be in a part of my retreat, this next one in August. And it's just like so full circle to me that we go back and just like reconnected in that moment. It's wild.
It was hysterical because so I have to be super honest. And I think I've said this, maybe I haven't said this explicitly to you, but yeah, like life happened. We grew apart. Not that like we grew apart, because it's not like we were like super close, but like we were definitely friendly. And you like literally the night before, I think maybe 2 days, but I think it was literally the night before that.
I forgot about that
workshop.
Yep.
You had followed me on Instagram, which like, and I was like I saw it, but in my head, I'm thinking like, Deanna's like the bikini competitor. She's all fitness and like hardcore. And I don't know how much we have in common. So like, I didn't follow you back on purpose.
You bitch.
And then literally I like, you walk into the breathwork workshop and I was like, oh, like super cool. And it wasn't until you opened your mouth and started sharing, and I was like, oh, hell yes. This is my people. I didn't know you were like that. I was like, oh, yes, this is no accident. Let's get together. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even crazier because I literally forgot about that. And you know how I'm pretty sure it popped up. Hannah had liked one of your posts. It was your TEDx speech. And I was like, that's super cool. Like, good for her. Haven't talked to her in a bazillion years, but like, happy for her. And I was like, let me just see if I can find her Instagram. And I was like, what are the chances? They're in it's just like that was meant to line up.
Yeah, there's no chances.
There is no chances, but it's just like how wild. And to like thinking about it, there were Danny and Lua who were also at my retreat. I met them that night as well. Didn't talk to them, but remember they shared. And when they walked out, we were talking and I was like, you guys are so cute. There was this couple there. And for me, that was the first time I had seen like males doing any sort of healing. So I was like, how cool is that? Like, love this. And then like randomly they ended up being in the retreat as well. So it's just like so crazy how things come full circle. And before I lose this thought, I do want to say, this is exactly why I always preach so hard about being your authentic self and finding your voice, because you will attract your tribe. Like literally, as Caili just said, when she was like, she is my people. Like I felt like such a weirdo at that point in time. And then I found you again, who they're like, this is your jam. And why wouldn't you want to be surrounded by the people who are into the same things as you and are just like wholly openly themselves? And you have done so much healing for me just in our conversations, like consistently. So, I mean, yeah, just be yourself, people.
You're making me tear up. So, you know what I'm realizing, Dee?
What?
That was 3 months ago. That was March. That is nuts.
And just think,
there's no time at all.
Nothing. I was just like, how much? I have full body chills right now. How much has changed in 3 months? Like, I feel like that was a lifetime ago. That was like my first outing, and in 3 months, like what?
Yeah, and speaking of like, sprinting towards the path.
Right. I was just going to say, like, when you get in alignment, those quantum shifts just happen. And just these excessive jumps into being on the path that you're supposed to be. For you guys that can't see, Caili's dancing, and it's great. But like when you just follow your heart and your passion, it does. It feels so good. It feels so right. And you very quickly reach your milestones, your goals, your dreams, your aspirations when you're doing what you're set out to do, what you're passionate about, what you're authentic about. The universe always finds a way, always provides. So yeah, real cool. Okay. So getting back into our story here, how did you realize you were so gifted? Like, how did you come into knowing like, hey, I'm a medium, and like, I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. How did I? So I don't know. So the answer is, because people ask me this all the time, is like, yeah, how did you know? And it wasn't like a when, like I've always had it. When I realized what it was, I look back on my life and see that it was always there. But what started happening in grad school in Pennsylvania is I started, like I said, really nursing and nurturing my spirituality. And I started meditating differently, right? Like I wasn't doing like meditations to control anxiety. I was meditating to like astral project or manifest or like go into a quantum field. So it was like a different kind of meditation. And I would meditate for like hours on the Susquehanna River and like fully leave my body and have some really crazy experiences. And it was around then that I started just having more downloads, is like kind of what I call them when I'm not intentionally channeling. So channeling is when I'm like, I sit down and I mean to like bring spirit through. Whereas if I'm just like out walking about in my regular life and things kind of drop in, I call that a download. Anyway, I was having that more and more often, but our minds, our egos are fantastic at compartmentalizing so that we don't have to like change our identity, right? So at the time, I was still really struggling to not be the crazy girl, right? Because you have to understand, I spent the entirety of my high school career in and out of psychiatric hospitals. So I was super, super sensitive and like wounded in that way because I didn't want another reason for people to think I was crazy. And I'm getting like emotional even just thinking about it, because it makes me really sad to know that I like neglected myself in that way because I was never crazy. I was just really, really struggling. But that's that's the vernacular you get. And even when you're in a psychiatric facility, that's the language that's tossed around among the other people there. Cause like humor helps you survive. And so we would often joke about how we were just tossed in the loony bin. And so I had a really like deep core wound about that. And I was not really comfortable telling people like, yeah, well, I can also tell you what's going to happen in the future. And I can also talk to dead people. Like that was a little bit of a stretch for me at the time. But then when I moved back home and I was still like continuing to like work with Kim, that's my shaman, and do more intentional spiritual work, the downloads got like way too consistent and way too specific and accurate. And I started really not being able to deny what was going on. Like my cousin texted me and I was like, oh, you're pregnant. And then she like sends me a picture of the sonogram. My friend was expressing concerns about money. And I was like, oh, money's coming. I don't know why. And the next day she got this huge refund check and things like that were happening more and more. And I was just like, well, okay. And then it was, so again, like, I'm just like kind of like holding this intention again. So for me, this all kind of came out of the intention to switch career paths. I had been manifesting a career shift since graduate school. And now I'm home, I'm working as a therapist, and I'm still like doing the spiritual work, and I'm still just finding joy and whatever. And I'm like being kind of laid these breadcrumbs, and it led me eventually during the pandemic to an intuitive development course. And it's funny because I had heard about it 3 months prior. When I heard the price tag, I was like, no, thank you. And then 3 months later, when it came up in a session actually with Kim, she's like, what's the course you need to be taking? I was like, damn it. Because I knew like, and of course, I had never said anything about it to her, but I was like, okay, like, but it felt good. It felt exciting. It just felt scary to make that large of an investment. I had never made that large of an investment in myself, financially, other than, well, actually that's a lie because I spent a whole ton of money on graduate school. Right. And I think like that's been helpful for me, right? Like realizing how much I paid for tuition and how much more I use like the spiritual work that I've invested in over the years. Right. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a slight tangent.
I feel like that's that thought process of like that concrete, like school is concrete. I will get something out of this because that's that mainstream. Like everyone goes to college and then we get a job versus like when you're investing in yourself in something on the side, you're like, oh, that's scary. Like, what if I'm wasting my money? You know what I mean? When in theory, like you could be wasting your money with either of them.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And that is almost increasingly becoming the case in some regards. But anyway, So anyway, 3 months later, she tells me like, oh, there's some course you need to be taking. I was like, I already know what it is. And so I messaged the woman who I know is teaching this course. And of course, it starts tomorrow. Like the new cohort of it starts tomorrow. But the thing is at that time when I went to like make that payment, I paid in full. It didn't feel scary anymore. Like I had like, so this is also a philosophy I operate under. And I know that we've talked about this so much. I understand that the universe is always getting you ready. Mm-hmm. So I've experienced, particularly in the last year, like I'm amazed at how much practice the universe or God or whatever, or my higher self or whatever is setting myself up for. So, right. So like learning about that course 3 months prior and knowing the price, knowing the investment really helped me kind of like get myself around it by the time that it was appropriate for me to make that investment. Mm-hmm. And that happens over and over again. Like I just can't, I spoke at City Hall, about like suicide prevention and awareness to like all the councilmen in the council chambers. And I had never stepped foot in City Hall before in my life. But when I was seeing Josh, the man who facilitated the breathwork workshop that we both attended for context, we randomly one day went to City Hall.
Come on.
Like just like walked around City Hall. I swear to God. And he said, he's like, let's try to go into the council chambers because it's so beautiful in there. But we couldn't because it was locked. But like, how bizarre is that? Right? Like that, like I said, like I was practicing what it would be like to walk into City Hall, go up to the 13th floor and speak in the council chambers. And I didn't even know it.
That's so funny too. Like in that, when you explain it that way, it just makes me think of like how every single thing that happens to you, every person that enters your life, everything has a reason. Like obviously you and him, whatever now is different versus then, but like you had to have that experience with him for that scenario to happen, for you to be prepared to go in and have that speech. Like everything is always laid out for us. You just have to trust that there's a purpose in everything we do.
Absolutely. Wow. Fast forward, I take the course. It's held on Zoom. I get on the call and we have like a quick opening meditation, and then we just are literally paired up and we're supposed to start channeling. And I do. Like I pick a person and I'm like, okay. And I start reading her, and I don't know, I might channel for like 4 or 5 minutes. And she's like, that's everything that's going on for me this week.
Wow.
Like I spoke about like a career pivot, like her parents having some issue with it. Her parents expressing like they really wanted her to like have like a solid 9 to 5. But she had been self-employed for some time and she was considering going back to like the structure and routine of a 9 to 5, but she like was not wanting to do that. And that's like everything that came through. And she was like, yeah, that's it. and I was super excited, but like me ego was like, that's a fluke. You made that up. Like you know what I mean? But then through the course, it was enough. I had done it enough times that I was like, not only am I legit, I am very good.
You're super good. You're spot
so then
on.
I started, thank you. I think, it's cool. It's really fun. And it's crazy because I literally surprise myself every time I give a reading. Every time I feel like I'm making it up. So word to the wise out there. I will let you know when that like really fully owning it happens, but it hasn't happened yet. I still feel like I'm making it up every time. And then every time I open my eyes and people are like crying and they're like, holy, like, wow, like, how would you know that?
I feel like, I mean, sometimes stuff will just come to you, or actually, I remember when I just happened to be on Instagram and you were like, I'm going to do a free reading for anyone. And I was like, oh, me. And it was spot on. And like you'll just randomly get like messages for me and they're always so spot on. So it's funny to hear you say like you still question yourself, because I know that's not the case. And actually, Caili asked me to be like a test student for the students that were going through her intuitive course. And of course I did it. And every single thing that they channeled was so spot on, except for one thing really pissed me off. And I'm still mad that this came to me. I'm still very upset about it.
Which is something we've discussed previously.
Yeah. I mean, like literally, and I'm mad because which I'll share. It's not a big deal, but like every other thing was so spot on. So I'm like there's no way that this is the one thing that's inaccurate. So it really pisses me off. I literally was like spiraling for 2 days, Caili, because I'm like, no, this is not what I want for my life. But like, that's the joke of it all. We don't like it's what's going to happen. But I was very certain that I was only having one child, and both of the girls in your course were like, I see a baby in your near future. And I'm like, no, the F you don't. Like that, you're wrong there. And Caili was like, oh, honey, just accept it because it's like 100% coming. So I was not okay for a couple days because that was not in the cards for me.
Well, and two, like speaking of the universe is getting you ready. Like you can, you have free will, right?
Yeah.
Like, so always free will exists, but you are a woman who wants to live in alignment, in surrender. And so like, if it's for your highest, which it seems that it is, like you are eventually going to lay down, hand it over and be like, I'm ready. And you just need to throw your temper tantrum for a little bit, clearly. And that's okay, right? Like, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, like similar to this, that, oh man, I do this a lot, right? Like when it was time to quit my job or do other work, like I was like, I don't want to. And I'm like stamping my feet, I'm tossing my fist down, but like, and then once I'm done with that, I can come to the place of like, no, this is actually what I want to. this is like definitely what I really want. I'm just fucking afraid.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, the 100% comes down to fear for sure in so many ways. Like, will I be a good mom if I have multiple children? Will I still be able to love my son fully if I have to share my attention with multiple kids? Will I still be a good entrepreneur if I have to like focus on more children? Like, of course, it comes down to fear. But I will say I'm so grateful that that happened, because if I had just woke up pregnant one day, I would have been in a terrible spiral versus what you just said of knowing like I had my temper tantrum. I've come to a more accepting place of it. And I will get to a point where like, of course I want another child. Like I will love all the babies that I have. You know what I mean? So like, that's such a good explanation of that process and kind of just processing things. So yeah, I guess thank you for ruining my life.
Yeah, right. You chose this. I didn't.
Okay, so moving on from these unexpected children. So I guess we kind of already talked about your process of a little bit, like you jumping into entrepreneurship. I do want to chat about it a little more though, because you are the only other person that I personally know who is crazy like me and does 100,000 things. So I guess just like that journey, how that all looks for you and all the things that you offer, because you do a million things.
I super do. Yeah. So I live my life. So speaking of like what we were saying before, like we always have free will, but I really, at a certain point, just like fully committed to surrender and living my life by doing what spirit or source or God tells me to do. And I think, like speaking of human design or astrology, I think that that's like our strategy that we work best with. So I'm both a manifesting generator and I am a Gemini. And I am a Leo moon. So I have a lot of like fiery air. I have a lot of energy and I can move super quickly. I learn super quickly. I speak super quickly. So I can do a whole lot at once. And I can shift really quickly. And so from the outside to somebody who's a little bit more measured or likes to feel a little bit more grounded, my life could look pretty crazy. And I'm so okay with that. But I gave my first paid reading in September of 2020. And I quit my job in January of 2021. Because speaking of like how our friendship has developed, like when it's for you and it's time. And it went so fast. By December, I was making more money working 10 hours a week, taking coaching clients, life coaching clients. So marrying, the mysticism with my clinical background and giving readings than I was working 40 hours a week in my 9 to 5. So I was like, okay, well, like, peace. Because also it's not like it was an accident, right? Like this wasn't completely impulsive. This is what I had been very intentionally curating and manifesting for years at that point. So I was like, all right, let me fly. But my commitment to listening to source has not stopped. So I trust that my interest and my curiosity is guiding me. So that has opened up new avenues of work. So I now also work as a death doula, and that's more on a limited basis recently, but it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. So for those of you wondering, because it's not exactly a
never heard of
common
it before.
term. Yeah. So a death doula is an individual who provides emotional and spiritual support to a person who is dying, going through the dying process. Just as a doula exists for women giving birth, bringing souls into this earth, I give support to people who are leaving this earth and discarding their bodies and moving on to whatever's next. And I love it so much. I kind of came to it after a really profound plant medicine experience where I experienced death again. And I came back and I just realized how fortunate I am to have, already with my like suicidality, my dying, a clinical death, and then dying, a death in plant medicine. I realized that I kind of hold myself in a seat of privilege with my relationship with death, because I understand that most people are walking around terrified of this thing that is definitely coming. And I've seen how this fear of death and this inability to kind of reconcile with this certainty that's coming, not only for us, but everybody we love, how much that negatively impacts what they're willing to do in this life and their relationships, right? Like families fall apart at the end of life, whether that's their parent or their spouse, because nobody's willing to talk about, well, what's going to happen when they die before death is imminent. And then that's why you see all the issues that arise, right? Like arguing about property, arguing about estates, arguing about, well, should she be buried here or does she want her ashes scattered here? But because people are so unwilling to like look at and embrace this inevitable demise, it totally robs us of some of our vitality. And so while I really love serving the dying, and I think it's a really beautiful opportunity to kind of like sit with some truth, I also am very passionate about it because I think it allows me to serve better the living. So that's one of my things. I have also recently gotten into public speaking because I'm super passionate about healing. And so like I said previously, I would not be alive if it weren't for therapy and medication, but I would not be thrilled to be alive. I relented to being alive, right? Like I was okay to be here, but it wasn't until I started embracing my spirituality and embracing like all this like vast expanse of me that I had like kept hidden for the longest time that I really began to be happy to be here. And it's just helped me in such profound ways. So I'm really passionate about kind of bringing holistic healing back into the mainstream. And so that's why I talked about embracing suffering in my TED Talk, because that's like the way that I got here. Whereas like where I was working and of course there are models of psychotherapy that are a little bit more holistic and spiritually centered, but that was not my program. That was not my education. And that was certainly not the corporation that I was working for. It was very much like survival. And granted, a lot of our clients were in survival, but like it kind of gave no option for like how to change working with them once they were out of survival. And that's just like not what I'm about, because I really believe that like we didn't come here to survive and like pay taxes and die. I believe that we came here to be fully expressed and fully joyful and know freedom. And so that's why I'm really passionate about like speaking about all the ways in which I got here. And that's not for everybody, but I'm super passionate about speaking about things that people don't want to speak about.
Which you're really good at. And I think too, it's so, and I mean, you know it firsthand because you were in it like that. And I've gone through therapy too, but I feel like our society is so set on or being based on a model of putting a Band-Aid on something. And instead of getting to the root of the issue, like you just said, like there is a way to live, thrive, live this, enjoy and wholeness, health and happiness versus like, all right, here's a sticker because you went to therapy and like, we'll see you next week. It's okay. Well, you'll make it through another week. And there's so much, there's just so much more to life than getting by,
Yeah. Well, because I think we're really taught, and I hear this all the time, and it just makes me want to like shake people. It's like good vibes only, or like, I'm not talking to that person anymore because they're toxic. And that's just like fraudulent in some regard, right? Because the human experience necessitates suffering. Nobody gets out of here without having a shit day, let alone many of them, right? Like things fall apart, people die, our hearts get broken, our bodies deteriorate, suffering happens. And when we like don't have acclimation to that, or we don't normalize that, then we're shocked when it happens. And then we think something is wrong with us. And that is such a disservice. And it breaks my heart. Because if we can make friends with suffering and not in like a masochistic way, right? Not in a way that we like seek it out, but if we can make friends with it, then we don't have to push it away And then we can more readily come back to love, come back to joy. But if our goal is always to just feel good because we think that's what we're supposed to do, then we make a whole mess.
And I think too, like, you don't know what feeling good really is unless you've felt bad. Like, you appreciate you appreciate those good moments so much more when you know what it's like to not feel that way. And I think I speak from, just my perspective when I say, you feel very alone in those moments when you're so busy trying, like, you're not alone in your suffering in a way. Like, we're all, like you just said, we're all going through trauma. We're all going through bad things. Like, I have hard days because my dad died. But when you say it that way, it's like lots of people's dad die. Like, everyone's dad dies, and not taking away from my being able to feel sad about it, but like just coming to that like, if we talked about it more, if I was more prepared for what was coming. I mean, not that you can prepare for that, but I just understand what you're saying of like being more realistic with the inevitable. I think would make you feel a lot less alone in going through your things, and more open to talking about it, and more open to leaning on others when you're going through it versus like bottling it up because like it's just me and my sadness.
Absolutely. Because we evolved to heal through community, to heal through sharing, through relating, right? So this blew my mind. In this fantastic book I read recently about developmental trauma, we evolved to know 60 to 100 people. Think about how many people you just follow on Instagram, right?
Right. Yeah.
We evolved to like have the capacity, our brains, to know 60 to 100 people. I follow, I think, like 400 and something. And that's on the low end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now think about how many people you truly know and truly feel connected with. So again, we're kind of negotiating this like feeling like, why do I feel like something's wrong? Because I know all these people, but I don't feel truly seen and truly known by maybe anybody. There are plenty of people who walk around this life not feeling truly seen or known by anyone. And that's in part because they're so unwilling and so terrified to share who the fuck they are because they think something's wrong with them because they have shame, because they have suffering. And that's just like I said, it breaks my heart. And so that's why I'm so passionate about like, I will, the first time I meet somebody, I'll be like, yep, I had an eating disorder. Yep, I had sexual trauma. Yes, I committed suicide or I attempted suicide a number of times because I just want so much to be a permission slip to people to show them like, it can be done. Like we can talk about these things and like, look how good I am. People say to me all the time, like, it's the craziest thing to like experience your energy speaking about the experiences that you've had because it makes no sense. And I said, I know that's the point. Like, that's why I'm so passionate about just laying it all out there because it's crazy. Like it's a different person. And that's what like Joe Dispenza says, right? Is like to change your future, you literally have to change the person you are. And so people get afraid of that, right? People get afraid of doing that. Well, like, so for example, like I thought I wouldn't be funny anymore. Like, turns out I'm still hilarious, right? Like, but like, it's not like all of a sudden I'm going to wake up and like, I don't know, be really into like race car driving. I don't know, but like, you're still you, but like, you just become a more expressed, more joyful, more lovely version of you that feels safer.
I will say too, you are the biggest permission slip in my life that I've ever experienced. So like you've achieved your goal. So like, okay, what's next? Because like you are checkbox, like you already did that. So yeah, like hands down, that's what I meant when I said like our conversations are always like quantum leaps for me. Always. Just like you are just a glowing light of authenticity, and you fully are like, she is not joking. She is like, hey, I'm Caili, and boom, 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 boom. And one of those things has to line up with you, and you're like mind blown. Like, okay, well, if you can share that, then I can share that. And it's just like, oh, what? Like, I'm going to hand off the permission slip to someone else now. Like, you are a creator of permission slips. So thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That feels so delicious. Thank you so much.
I I love you so much. You are very welcome.
I love you so much.
I want to switch gears to the retreat. Well, I would love for you to share like your experience, but before we do that, so like I literally reached out to Caili after talking to Brittany. I was like, I really feel like Caili needs to be there. I was just very called to like offering it to you. And I was not upset about my decision whatsoever. I mean, just having your energy there was amazing. Having your knowledge there, all of it, your presence, all the things. But it was a very validating experience for me too, which I hope you share about, wink, wink, your, even just like your breath work. What happened in breath work. For me, it was just a very moment of like, okay, I can do this too. And like holding space and like being there and like knowing that like things are going to get crazy, but like I can get through it because you were the highlight of that for me. But yeah, just go ahead and share, if you would, the experience and maybe, yeah, just start there.
So for context, I have to like share because you guys can't see this because you'll only hear the audio, but I am like, cannot stop dancing. I am loving this so much. It's just so much fun. It's my favorite thing. But yeah, so for context, like I said, I've been on a healing journey for about for like a long time, like 11 or 12 years, but on the spiritual kind of leg for about 5 years. And I have been introduced to breath work a number of times that I've always kind of danced around it. Like I put myself in vats of ice water all the time. I will sit with terrifying plant medicine. I will do lots of things, but I have always found myself dancing around breath work. And I asked myself in January, like, why is this? And immediately I was like, oh yeah, you hanged yourself. So if you're not familiar with the term or phrase, the body keeps the score, that is it. So not only is trauma stored in our brains, trauma is stored in our bodies. So when our body experiences physical or somatic sensations similar to those that were experienced during a traumatic event, like you have a trauma response triggered. And so because my brain and my body knows that I almost died because of a lack of oxygen flow, I've always been really afraid of and avoidant of breath work. And of course, as soon as I realized this in January, I was like, oh, well, I guess that means I'm going to be doing breath work pretty soon. And then, of course, like a month later, I meet a guy who facilitates breath work and entertain like a brief romantic relationship with him. So, of course, like I said, the universe is always working out for us.
And that's how you ended up at that class that we were both at. Like,
exactly. And that's how I met Deanna, because I'm, always kind of pursuing the things I'm afraid of in the name of my healing. So anyway, fast forward to the retreat and we lay down, and I know enough by now about breath work that I'm going to experience death, because that's kind of what I always do, as I always experience dying. Because I think in a lot of ways that is like one of the gifts that I have on this planet, is to be like a messenger of death. And again, like not like in a fucking creepy, ominous way, but in a way that's like, this is truth and this is what's happening. And this is what gives our lives any meaning. And like, let's talk about it. But in order to do that effectively, I have to know death very well. So anyway, I lay down and I'm starting to do this breath, and the breath that we did, I hated even more than the other breath, because that I'm used to doing, which is holotropic breathing. It's similar, but slightly different in that like you sound like you're dying. So you're in a room or in this like shelter, it's open air, it was so beautiful, but especially Dom, this one guy, he's like 6'2", so he's got big old lungs. And I hear him sounding like he's gasping for air and sounding like he's dying. And meanwhile, I'm having the physical sensation of, you are gasping for air, you are in danger, you are dying. And I'm pretty quickly able to go into like kind of a psychedelic state with this work now. And I go back into a past life where I had a miscarriage and then chose to end my life by cutting my wrists in a bathtub. And I experienced that death again. And at that point, I let out like a blood curdling shriek and just started sobbing. And it's all very dramatic, but I'm like still entranced and I'm still in the breath, but I'm like reliving this moment to like clear that energy and clear that trauma. And then I like, after I'm done sobbing, I stop breathing like completely. And so Deanna and Brittany were walking around the room, like doing some energetic work and like offering oils to like help facilitate the process. And Deanna had come to me by that point and she's getting afraid and she's saying, Caili, breathe. And I was in my head, like I was just trying to communicate with her telepathically because I was very much not ready to come back yet. And so I knew that I needed to just like be dead for a while. And I was not breathing. Like I was not breathing for a very long time. And Deanna was like, I felt her getting more and more afraid, like, Caili, come back. And finally I just said out loud, like, no, because I was getting like annoyed. I'm like, for the record, I was like, honor my process, please. But yeah, I was my highest self or someone was like really getting frustrated that my process was not being honored because I know that like my friend Deanna just has some fear of death that she's got to work through, and I'm happy to help her.
No. I was afraid you were going to die on my property under my watch. I'm like, listen, if you want to fulfill your death needs, please do them elsewhere, not at this point. I literally, sorry not to cut you off, but you literally said again, it was not you. There's whoever, your higher self, when she is not ready. And I was like, oh, got it. Okay, I'm going to let you do what you got to do. Like, she's okay in there, but I'm going to leave you to do what you have to do.
Yeah, so then she walked away, which was nice.
Yeah, like, all right.
Because and so I have no idea. I wasn't breathing for like quite some time. But then I came back, and when I came back, it was this joyful choice. And so for context, when I did hang myself when I was 18, I was in a coma for 4 days. So it wasn't like I like got defibrillated and came back immediately. Like I was in that like between worlds for quite some time. And I've re-experienced that kind of like liminal space a number of times between breathwork and plant medicine and just meditation. And like, I think there's something really potent for me there that like, it is my duty in a lot of ways to like bring that down into this plane, bring that wisdom of like the transition, of the in-between, of the mystery, for whatever reason. Honestly, like it hasn't like fully materialized into like tangible, like talking points. But I definitely like, cause that experience has happened often. I took a psilocybin journey last fall and I re-experienced being in a coma, and I heard my mother talking to me while I was in a coma, like in the hospital, and her like begging me to come back and like saying, you know, I love you, I'm here. And just like, but like the strain in her heart and in her throat. And I remember I heard her saying like, are you in there? And I was silent for a long time, like just kind of like floating in that ether. And then I said, yeah, I'm here. And then immediately I was back online.
Wow.
And I don't, and so it was really very interesting, but like I said, I haven't like fully sorted that out, but I think it's very clear to me that there's something for me to bring to this plane, to the people that I work with and that I share with, from being able to entertain that space.
That's super powerful, which I'm excited to see, because I feel like when you have your things click, they click fast, and I feel like they're continuous. So like, obviously I know that it will come. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it was definitely super powerful. I would love if you would share like why you would recommend that retreat to someone in any way that it was healing for you, aside from what you just shared, just kind of like that. And also the fact that you're actually going to be partaking and facilitating at the next one, which is super exciting.
Yeah. So interestingly, like it kind of blew my mind that I've never attended a retreat before, which is wild, like given like how much I've like really steeped myself in this kind of like realm of work. But there were a lot of components that I felt were like necessary and sufficient to allowing me to experience the quantum leap is really it. And I know that's a term that's like tossed around really quite almost flippantly in this kind of space. I've never had one before. Maybe I have, but I have not felt this way. I don't think I have. I think this was the first quantum leap I really ever experienced. I left that retreat feeling like a different person, feeling like vibrating so high that I just haven't experienced that without I've experienced that one other time, and that was sitting with 5-MeO DMT, which is literally called the God molecule. So like it's the most potent plant medicine on the planet. So aside from that, like I really haven't had an experience like that, but I think there were a lot of things that contributed to that. One was being in the middle of nowhere and not having cell phone service. So, and I think you had said something about like how service was limited. And at that point, I committed to just not looking at my phone. And then when we arrived, the Wi-Fi in the house that we were staying in was out. So that like kind of, right, exactly. So that like really solidified it for me that like, no, we're doing this for real. And then the Wi-Fi ended up working, but I really wanted to commit to like unplugging because I have never unplugged before in my life. And so that allowed me like the kind of like mental container, right? Because like after the day's activities, like I very easily could have like gone on Instagram when I went back to my room, but like I really didn't want to. I really wanted to just like hold tight the container for like the compound effect to occur in. Two, it was just literally so beautiful. And I think aesthetically, like you guys did such an excellent job making it a cozy space outside of like the actual healing activities we were doing, right? So like I still feel so like humbled and nurtured and taken care of, like the meals that we had, how beautifully decorated the space was, how clean it was, how, you know, you had like the teas and all the extra like accoutrement that really like all those small details really fed the greater tone and energy of the weekend. And then finally, I think, you know, like all the things that we did, like activity wise, were all things I've done before.
Right.
I think it was really the power of the container and the community that blasted me off because I love groups. I love people. I'm so passionate about like real connection and community. And we definitely established that like immediately, like day one introductions, we were all just like, we all went so far in. And I was like, I'm so not used to people meeting me where I'm at, right? Like, so like I said before, like I will bare my chest 30 seconds into meeting anybody and like, not from like a needy way, just like this is who I am. And like, this is like, I'm all good with this. But everybody met me there, which I'm not used to. And that was really, really cool and fun. And it was just clear that everybody was there for the same reasons, right? Like there were people who maybe like were new to spirituality. There were people that were more like farther along. And I don't even want to use that word, just have been on this path longer. There is no farther along, right? But that like everybody just met everybody where they were at. And it was almost like the conversations that occurred between activities and like the validation and the sharing that occurred between activities was like really where the juice was for me, I think. It just allowed me to feel so seen for such an extended period of time by effectively strangers, right? Like I've had experiences of that, like where I felt like really seen and like not only seen, but like honored by like romantic partners or friends, but like just like kind of in passing moments where this was like a really concentrated experience of that. And that was very, very empowering. And again, like I know that I really hold that intention is so powerful. And so like, it's not a coincidence to me that you've chosen the name Empowerment Spiritual Retreats. Cause like I've done many like healing and releasing things, but not so much work around empowerment. And that is exactly how I walked away feeling, was like, I walked away feeling like a brilliant beacon of light.
You literally, and I think it was really cool. First of all, thank you for sharing all that. That was really well put together. And I am honored, and I feel like I want to give myself a little pat on the back. Like I feel real good about that. So thank you for sharing that. Also just thinking about it, like, again, going back to like, this was still just a thought 3 months ago, and like it happened, like crazy. But I love so much that everybody who came to that retreat came for a different, like they had a different experience. So you saying how like they met you at that level. Everyone had something so profound to share, but we were all in total understanding of like, we're here for the same purpose, even though it was all through different experiences. And what you just said was so big for me. That makes so much sense. Like, in a way, when we are seen by our partners and our friends, it's almost kind of expected. And to be seen that way from strangers was just a total different, it just hits different. You're so right when you say that. Like, I've never felt so seen in my entire life. And it was by a group of people that I hadn't met or don't know in that way. And like you said, they just have that, I don't want to say respect for you, but just like in awe of what you bring to the table. We were all in awe of what everybody brought to the table. And that felt so good. That feels so good.
Yeah. Cause that's what it's like. That's what we all crave, right? Is somebody to really know us and really know us and not only accept, but honor and cherish. Yeah. And that's why we're constantly terrified and avoidant of being our full selves. Because if we pull back parts of ourselves, if we're rejected, then, well, they weren't really rejecting me. They were rejecting who I'm pretending to be. So that's okay. I can digest that.
Wow. That was so good. Like, that is such a powerful statement, and it's so true. Like, I don't care if you don't like that fake version of me. It's not me. It's fine. But like, if I throw myself on the table for you and you reject that, like that, you rejected me at my core. Like, that's a scary thought. We all like crave being accepted. Caili, thank you so much for being a guest. I mean, we could literally talk forever, obviously. I mean, I do just want to say, like, if you are looking for any sort of coaching, anything like that, definitely check out Caili. I'll make sure to have her information in the show notes. Also, again, she just launched a podcast. Caili, I believe that, well, when this goes live, it will already have been out. But yeah, well, I'm excited for you for that. I can't wait to tune in. And I love you. I love everything that you bring to the table, your authenticity, everything about you. Thank you again for being a permission slip. And I just want to say, everything you shared today was very impactful. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Also, if any of you out there are looking or seeking to develop your own intuition, I am launching a new round of my intuitive development program, Open the Oracle, that will begin July 13th. It's an 8-week course designed to assist you stepping into your power and honoring the gifts that already are innately within all of us. I have so many people come through my intuitive development coaching who are on a spiritual path and like know that they're a little bit intuitive, and then they complete working with me and then they are taking payment for readings. This could be you. You're not crazy. And that's what I'm here to show you. So if you have any interest in that, find me on Instagram, slide in the DMs, and we will get you registered because spots are limited.
Thank you for sharing that. I hope it sits with somebody because, guys, she's amazing. So thank you again. I will chat with you soon. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to find out more, you can follow me on Instagram at Empowered with Deanna and my personal page, Fit Deanna Lolita. You can also visit me on my website, which is DeannaMerlinoFit.com. Make sure that whatever platform you guys are listening on, please rate and subscribe. And this means so much to me. It's going to help get me out there to help so many other people. I'm so grateful that you're here with me on this journey of wellness and self-empowerment. I cannot promise that it will always be easy, but I do know that it will always be worth it. Stick with me, and together, let's start living as the version of us that we were meant to be. Because the world is waiting for your gifts, and you deserve to live the life of your wildest dreams and beyond. So friends, let's get empowered.